over 40% of people didn't trust their managers. Is the leader acting or the manager acting in their best interest?
Today's guest is Richard Hoyle, trainer, speaker and coach with a lifelong commitment to leadership and teamwork.
If the follower, should we say, thinks that their leader is not acting in their interest but acting in his or her own interest, the leadership trust breaks down.
He began his career in the British Army, then spent 9 years in sales leadership at Canon UK before becoming deeply involved in the development and delivery of the Insights Discovery model.
We all take ourselves far too seriously.
Right.
And by taking ourselves too seriously, we put ourselves in a box. And therefore we don't grow. What point in life do we stop growing? Do we stop learning new things? Do we stop expanding?
For over 20 years, he's helped people become more aware of their potential and enjoy their work more through great leadership, team development and stress management.
If the individual salesperson is not achieving, there's usually a reason why, and it's not the price of the competitors.
He brings together commercial experience, Jungian psychology insight and a Buddhist perspective in his work.
A lot of our problems become from our focus upon ourselves, of how we feel about things. And effective leaders think about other people, they think about their teams. They don't think about, is this decision going to affect my shareholding bonus?
Richard, welcome to the Whole Leader podcast.
All right, Richard, thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for coming. I've been really looking forward to this conversation and really excited about it. For our listeners, it would be great just if you could give a short introduction of your own, and then I've got plenty of questions for you that we'll get on to.
Great. Well, I think your introduction covered the most important things. I guess it's sort of my interest in leadership really began at Sandhurst, where I was very lucky to be one of the first cohorts to study with the John Adair style of leadership, the sort of team, task and individual, which I think remains really the foundation of all the leadership development and programs since then. And it's been a real sort of fascination for me to see good leadership, which sadly is a bit rare, some very bad leadership, which also fortunately is quite rare, but most of the time it's just a bit of a mismatch where people mix up leadership and management in the same bucket. And what I try to do is really bring the personal side of it to leadership, because I think if people can't lead themselves through understanding themselves, then there's no way are they going to lead anybody else.
No, absolutely not. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all about Sandhurst and the leadership development that you learnt there. Maybe we could take a step back before that, because it's a big decision to go into the military, and you had a long and successful career there over 17 years and becoming a major. You must have been there through a number of well-known conflicts with Northern Ireland and the Falklands and the Cold War and all those things. So I guess what was going through your mind when you initially joined? What was it that took you out of civilian life into the military?
Well, thanks for that introduction. Actually, it was about as deep as a puddle. I was 17 years old. My father showed me a booklet for Welbeck College, and I thought that looks like fun. And the rest is history, as they say. There wasn't any great drive for it. What appealed to me most, I think, was the opportunity for sport, the opportunity to do something different, go to different places, and to have a job which involved a high degree of practicality.
And an element of fun in there, which is so important in work. But I would imagine that it can't always be fun, and you must have seen how leadership operates under pressure. Perhaps you could talk to us about your experience of using the leadership skills that Sandhurst helped you develop, and that you rose through to the rank of major, sort of developing in some of those more difficult situations that you'd have encountered.
Yes, unfortunately, I was very much a peacetime soldier, so I didn't walk away with rows of medals as some of my colleagues did. But I think the question of leading under pressure is a very interesting one, because a lot of the training at Sandhurst, and I was lucky enough to have a 2-year course at Sandhurst, is about giving you the opportunity to experience yourself under pressure. And secondly, I think what it teaches you very clearly is that you cannot do stuff on your own. You're completely in an interdependent relationship with the people that you lead. And I find that very helpful moving forward. And those people who understood that were able to delegate effectively, which is something I had to learn, to delegate effectively and to trust people. And I think one of the reasons why leadership, although a multi-million-pound business, is the training of leadership, fails quite often because, as I said before, it gets linked very much into management, which is about managing a process, whereas leadership is essentially about connecting yourself with other people to achieve the task and the outcome.
You said an interesting thing there about developing trust and delegation. And I'm imagining actually they're deeply linked, that without the delegation, you can't build the trust. And without putting a toe in the water, it's difficult to build those connections.
Very much so. I think a lot of people have the misunderstanding that the army is very much a command and control. You say jump and I say how high. That's that type of approach. But it's not like that at all. The British Army works, and indeed all the British forces work on a basis of making sure people are very well trained, making sure people are very clear about what they have to achieve, and then really the management is quite a light touch, as long as everybody has those basic planks in place.
And you mentioned a new leadership paradigm, and you mentioned an individual that was involved in setting that shortly before you went to Sandhurst. It's not somebody I'm familiar with, but I'd love to hear more about that person and the model that they brought in.
Well, John Adair, with the action-centered leadership model, basically was one of the first people who designed a model for leadership, and he succinctly broke it down into three circles, rather like a Venn diagram, three interwoven circles, where he said the three elements which are so important was, first of all, the task, what you have to achieve, and if a leader doesn't achieve the task, then it's not really leadership. Secondly, the team, and the team interaction, the team development, and thirdly, the individual. And those three elements need to connect and interconnect with each other. And if you like, the bit in the middle is what leadership is. You neglect any one of those three elements in any way, and then it falls over. It doesn't work. They have to be in harmony with each other the whole of the time. Clearly, at different times, there's a different emphasis, but basically they have to be working together the whole of the time. You neglect one and the whole thing fails.
That is a very neat framework, and one that I will refer back to again. You mentioned that the real magic in there is the connection to the people, and through those task delegations and the way you lead, how you're in the middle of that Venn diagram, how you're operating. Maybe you've got some examples or things that you remember from that time of circumstances you found yourself in where you had to apply those techniques and be the kind of the leadership glue in the middle.
Yes, I had a very interesting couple of years as a tank commander, where you not only have to work very closely with your troop of tanks, and I had four under my command, and secondly, you were yourself an integral part of a crew of four people in the tank. And so there's an awful lot to think about. And again, I had some quite interesting times. Perhaps I shouldn't admit this, but I actually one of the few people who managed to turn a tank onto its side, which is not very easy thing to do. And one day and the same night, actually nearly sank my tank in a bog.
Wow.
It was also the same night as my son was born. So I think that was a fairly stressful,
remarkably stressful time.
And you then learn a bit about yourself, and you learn to trust other people, to trust other people's judgment. That was a key moment for us.
And that was before social media and mobile phones, so you must have had your head elsewhere when you were thinking about your son being born. And
I was. It didn't take too much attention to the fact that we were just driving into a swamp.
Yeah. And I noticed that you spent your time in the signals,
yes,
which is the sort of the intersection, as I understand it, as a civilian, between the military, between the army and technology, and how technology gets used and applied in the theatre of war. And as a technologist and somebody from that background, I'd love to sort of hear more about the sorts of things that you did.
I was very lucky, actually, Richard, because the soldiers that I led in that time were, in fact, very much people like myself. Most of my sergeants were certainly capable of degree level. Some of them had degrees. Their technical ability was excellent. And when they left the army, they all went into very good jobs in the civilian world. So leading them was interesting because you had to give reasons, you had to explain what you're trying to achieve, and then rely upon their expertise. And if your foreman of signal said this isn't possible, then you had to explain perhaps why you wanted it to be possible, but at the end of the day, accepted their advice and worked through them and trusted their technical ability.
And so you worked with lots of skillful individuals that actually could take those technical circumstances and make them successful as a leader. We're back to delegation again, aren't we? Relying on the people that know the trade to apply it in their own work.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key attributes of a successful leader is knowing the difference to who they can trust and who they can't trust, who is going to spin them a line and who's actually giving them proper sound reasons, and then listen to those reasons and then do something about it.
Mm-hmm. And because that's so fundamentally important and it's part of human nature, what have you got to sort of offer our listeners in terms of your own experience as you identify the people that you can trust in those situations and the people that you can't when you're inside a tank and it's on its side and you're sinking in a bog?
Again, go back to the beginning of where I said about, are people well trained? Do they know their job? Have you seen them have you experienced them, rather than doing that job and displaying those capabilities? And therefore you build a lot of trust with them. And also I think, do they trust you? And I think on a wider issue, actually, trust is one of the issues that today in our management structures we struggle with. It's quite frightening. I think last year, a survey was published saying that over 40% of people didn't trust their managers. And so you have to think, well, where does that come from? And I think it comes from a basic, again, a fundamental point of leadership, which I learned in the army, is you build trust through three elements. One is competence. Can the people do the job? Which is what I was referring to just now. Mm. Secondly is integrity. Are they telling the truth or are they spinning you a line, which we mentioned before? But the third element is what is known as benevolence. In other words, is the leader acting or the manager acting in their best interest?
Right.
And if the follower, should we say, thinks that their leader is not acting in their interest but acting in his or her own interest, then the leadership trust breaks down. And so often you hear people saying that, my supervisor, my manager, my director is out for themselves, for their own career advancement, for their own financial benefit, not for me. And then the trust doesn't happen.
It's so important, isn't it? And my own experience is that kind of authentic leadership bit becomes, more and more vital the further up an organization you go, because you become more steps removed, I suppose, from the people that are doing jobs at the coalface. And so finding ways to bring consistency to what you say and what you do so people know where they stand, being authentic and trying to give some of yourself into the environments you are with the people becomes really important. And imagine that's something that you've experienced as well.
Yeah, very much so. And certainly that's what you mentioned in your introduction, Richard, where the insights model could be very helpful, because I think there is a desire that to be a successful leader, you have to be good at absolutely everything. And if you're good at everything, the chances are you're good at nothing.
Yes.
So a leader has to understand his or her own strengths and weaknesses and build around them a team that will complement them and support them in the areas that they feel less strong in, and then build that trust with inside that management team. And so management teams which are a collective of different individuals with different strengths and weaknesses with a single purpose in mind, they're the ones which are the strongest.
And I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about the insights model, and that's become a very big part of your career. That as we sort of leave the army, and before we get to insights, there is a part of your career that fascinates me. We've talked about it before. Is your time at Canon, and my background has been in enterprise sales and selling to large organizations, and I know by reputation that the time that you were working at Canon, you were really at the forefront of enterprise sales and selling technology. Yeah. I'd love to hear what you took in terms of your skills and lessons from the army into that role, because you clearly made it a success, and you grew a team, and you were running a territory for Canon over that time.
I was very lucky in that the day I left the army was the day that Canon introduced a fax machine. And for anybody who's listening to this doesn't know what a fax machine is, go and ask your dad. Because it had a piece of technology, and I think I only got the job as a salesperson. I think I only got the job because when they said, "Do you know what a fax machine is?" I said, "Yes, of course. Would you like me to explain how it works?" And they went, No, it's not necessary." And I think that's why I got the job, because I knew absolutely nothing about the way the commercial world worked. And that was one of the reasons why I went for the job, other than I had a mortgage to pay. Because my passion has been to go into leadership training, but I was very much aware that I lacked that commercial experience from being in the army. And so Canon was a great organization to work for me. Absolutely loved it. It's tough. It's very tough because it's very much a performance-driven business, and you're only as good as your last 6 months' figures. Then it's a clean slate, and you start again. But it was a company which was growing in the UK. When I joined, it was actually a Japanese-led company, which was very interesting. The Japanese style of leadership is very interesting. And as the product grew and the company grew, I was able to grow with it. So when I left, I have a budget of about 10 million and 45 people working with me. So it was a good size business to work in. We shifted a lot of boxes. Let's put it that way.
A significant organisation, and a lot of deals, I'd imagine. Sales, from time to time, doesn't get the reputation as a function which deals in authenticity. It's one that has a reputation for, sell as much as you can, as quick as you can, whilst others in the business sort of, shake their heads and go, goodness, what have sales done now? Yeah. So coming from your own experience of leading authentically, staying connected with those around you, and getting the right balance of that, how did you approach that? Because I imagine you were able to bring something very positive and different to that.
As I said, I was very lucky in those opportunities to practice that. So I was only actually a salesperson for a very short period of time, and then they made me the area manager and etc., both on the direct side and on the dealership side of the business. But you're absolutely right, Richard. A friend of mine actually said, "I can't believe you've gone into sales." And I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, you'll spend your life persuading people to buy things they don't want." And that really made me sort of think about the perception of sales. But the way that I view it, and the way that I installed with my guys to do it, is you're helping somebody make a decision. Yeah, if they don't want it, they don't need it, they won't buy it. And if you try tricks and techniques and other things, then it'll bounce back anyway. So it's going to fail. So you might as well be open and honest, and help the person make that journey into a sale. And very often, if they're coming to you, then they want to buy something. So, you helping them make that decision, then they can get on with their business. One of the things I learned very easy is how poor decision-making can be in terms of buyers. If you're a multi-million-pound company and you're buying a fax machine for £2,000, why spend 6 weeks doing it?
Right.
The cost of buying that fax machine is way, way, way much more than trying to get it £100 cheaper somewhere else.
Quite.
And so decision making was often very, very distorted, which brings me back to the sort of like the leadership line: is what are we there to achieve? What are we there to do?
I see.
What is the outcome we're after? What is the values which drive behind the outcome that the leader is after achieving? And if that gets lost, you end up taking 6 weeks arguing over £100 over a fax machine, which is just a tool.
Absolutely.
In a system.
And it suits nobody, because it doesn't suit you with your targets, and it doesn't suit them with the business that they need to do.
And it takes up loads of time, which is the most important asset in my business as a sales manager, and also, more importantly, in the customer's business.
And a question I've got to ask you, because it's close to my heart then, running a team of salespeople as a leader, what would you reflect on as sort of important attributes as a sales leader, particularly to get the most out of them?
Be absolutely clear what you want them to achieve, and the rewards and penalties for lack of achievement. Talk to them, listen to them, learn very quickly which is the waffle and which is the truth. And then you can help them with the truth. You can't help them if they just waffle. But above all, keep them informed. I was very surprised to find out that I was one of the few managers who actually had regional meetings and told my people what was going on, what the region was doing, what we were trying to achieve, and our plans, our future plans to achieve that, rather than just get out there and sell a machine.
Got it. So again, it's back to kind of building that connection with your sellers, and helping them, coaching them really, so that you can help them get past the waffle that they're creating, and into the stuff that you can make a difference on to change the outcome on their deals.
Yeah, very much so. And I spent quite a lot of time, because I thought it was very important, on the individual salesperson. Because if the individual salesperson is not achieving, there's usually a reason why. And it's not the price of the competitors. No. It's their own internal processes, their own way of thinking, their own psychology, their own motivation of where they want to go and what they want to do.
And then after your time at Canon, your next venture was actually into insights, wasn't it? And as I've understood it, you were one of the very early joiners of the insights business. In fact, helping to establish the method and the work behind it, which is deeply interesting. And you talk on your profile about bringing in the Jungian psychology. And so this seems like a real change of emphasis and really focusing on something quite new now.
Yeah, it might appear like that, actually, Richard. I can understand why you might say that. But to be honest, it was more of an involvement. As I said, I left the army wanting to go into leadership training, and I sort of got sidelined, if you like, into Canon for a few years, which was very helpful because it paid my sons to go through university. So that was very, very useful at the time. So when I wanted to go out into to leadership training, I was looking for a tool or a methodology that I could use. And I applied for a job as a consultant with Insights. They were just beginning to develop this. It was their first attempt to build a direct sales channel. And so I was their first cohort of salespeople with their product. But Insights Discovery, as we know and love today, was still in the developmental stage at that time.
Would it be... it would be helpful for our listeners if you could outline a little more about what that Insights product was. As I've understood it, it's sort of built on the psychology and built on other models that sort of sit behind it as well, to get to the point where Insights was fully formed. So it'd be helpful for people that don't know, just to get a little bit of insight onto the system.
Yes, in the Insight story, the founding father is Andy Lothian, and Andy Lothian Sr. Had a little bit of a cathartic moment in that he needed some support with Jungian analysis. And he thought, this Jungian psychology is brilliant, really helpful to me, and therefore I guess it can be really helpful for other people. So he set about building a model. The big models around at the time were, of course, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, very well established, particularly in America.
Yes.
And DISC systems, the DISC systems.
Yep.
So that was his starting point. But by 97, he had developed, and I was there for a couple of years in that developmental stage of developing his own product, which was Insights Discovery, which was a purely Jungian product.
Right.
And his approach was, if Jung didn't say it, it's not in the model. So there's no add-ons, there's no extras. It's just purely Jungian psychology. Every part of it you can go back to a Jungian book and find a statement which relates to that particular aspect of the model.
Because this wasn't the first model to use sort of the Jungian psychology as I've understood it. Myers-Briggs is the same in the sense that it comes from that
Yes.
sort of stable as well. Is that right?
Yes, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, probably the world's largest Jungian-based system, very successful, and very good. What Andy did, two things to it, is he stripped some of the add-ons out and went straight back to the Jungian psychology, and I don't want to be technical about it, but he eliminated some of the areas which he thought was problematic in the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and of course then he introduced the colour model,
right,
of making the basic platform of Insights Discovery very accessible through a color-coded system. So the color-coded system, which everybody knows and loves and finds so very accessible, is really a shorthand for the psychology, a doorway which you get straight into using the profile. And of course, the other big part about it was the years that he and his team spent developing the software behind it to make a profile which is, people read it as being uniquely personal to them, with a very high face validity.
Yes.
And if people buy into that profile, and as you know, Richard, when I introduced the profile early on, because people buy into the profile and say, wow, how do people know this about me?
Yeah.
How does that work? And then you can go deeper into the psychology and what's behind it.
I find the whole thing remarkable. I mean, my own experience was that it matched me precisely when I looked at it, and yet it is based on some software. It's based on a model, and so there's some real magic in there. A question I've got, which I know my own exposure to Carl Jung is that ultimately what he's pushing towards is individuation, which is about the individual becoming the sort of the best version of themselves, but it's an individualistic rather than a team or collaborative way of thinking, psychological approach. So what's your thought on that? Is it that people need to understand themselves first in order to relate to others better?
Oh, absolutely. So if we go back to what we talked about a short while ago, Richard, with our three balls or our team, task and individual, the individual is absolutely vital. The individual understanding themselves. Why do I do what I do? Why do I say what I say the way I say it? Why do I think that she's a great work colleague and he's a bit of a Dumbo? Where does that come from? So what is my position? Because we all view the world from our own little world, our own little way of looking at things. And the more successful you become, particularly when I'm working with leaders, the more successful you become, the more difficult it is, because you're right. You wouldn't be the CEO if you got things wrong. You wouldn't have a PhD if you weren't very clever.
Right.
Yeah. So more and more you're reinforcing how good you are and how right you are, and therefore if you're right, the other must be wrong, and therefore you've got your individual but you haven't got your team. And so understanding yourself, understanding your strengths or weaknesses, understanding what you know, and more importantly what you don't know, can give you, and I use the word as you know in my workshop, of confidence. That the moment we judge ourselves quite often quite negatively, or we exaggerate our good qualities and have a full sense of our ego. And so if we are more okay with ourselves, yeah, this is what I know, this is what I don't know, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, I'm okay, but you can be okay too. If we have that much more harmony, then we'll get on better with our work colleagues. And knowing that they're different, that they're not bad, they're not stupid, they're not immoral, they just have a different perception of the world and a different preference of way they see the world, then the connection be made stronger.
And there's so much pressure in work to appear like you know what you're talking about and to appear like the professional, and it's on any sort of business related program you watch. I don't know, pick for example, if you watch The Apprentice, they're expected to know the answers to all of the trials they're given. I don't watch it because it's been on for many series, but I used to watch it. They're expected to know all of the answers, and if they don't, that's sort of seen as a weakness in some way. But what you're talking about is being more open to the things that we know and we're good at, and open to the things that we're not. And my own experience as a CEO, done it in 2 companies now, is that I'm trying not to make those mistakes of needing to appear to know the answers when I don't know them, and maybe I might have done in the past.
Yes, I suppose it's a bit about who you're talking to. If you're talking to your shareholders and they say, why is our share price going down? You're like, no idea.
There's a time and a place, right?
There's a time and a place. But back to my army experience, I needed to rely upon my senior NCOs, as particularly as a young officer. I needed them, and they made it very clear to me what I didn't know. But also I had a job to do, and so I could focus on my job by relying upon them. So, if you like, this full sense of knowing is a barrier to development, and the senior leaders have to do their homework as well. They have to, so they know who to go to, who to ask advice from, how to filter that advice and how to apply that advice.
What might be helpful for our listeners is briefly maybe to explain what those different kind of archetypal profiles are, the color profiles in insights. We've talked about it before, and I won't ask you to do your own impressions, though they're excellent, of the different the different types. But I'd love to be able to have a bit more of a discussion about what those different archetypes are, because they start to lay that groundwork for how to relate to others, and which, as you say, is vital to being able to lead.
The insights model is, as we mentioned before there, Richard, based upon 4 colours. And the red represents extroverted task orientation. The blue is introverted task orientation. The green, or earth green, shall I say, is introverted and a people relationship, people orientation. And the sunshine yellow is a extroverted and people orientation. So straight away you've got a division between the task orientation and the people orientation, whether it's introverted or extroverted. That's the bit that you read about up front in your profile with the graphs. And all of those energies are very applicable to leadership. Traditionally, when people say, what makes a great leader? The red energy comes out quite strongly. You've got to have high red energy, because the red energy is about task achievement. It's about getting out there, getting things done, making things happen, driving things forward. And that's very, very important. The leader has to do that. And of course, the leader needs to know what they're talking about, needs to talk sense, needs to have a knowledge-based decisions. And the cool blue energy, which is more introverted, more thoughtful, more detailed side, really helps supplant that together. And then if leadership is about anything, it's about people. Leadership is a people relationship business. It's about managing people, helping people, supporting people, motivating people, building aspirations and passion and direction and fulfillment. It's a people business is leadership. And of course the yellow and the green energy are really important to do that. The green particularly is around about values, because if people do not know why they're doing what they're doing, then why should I? Why should I miss my child's school play? Why should I miss my wedding anniversary while I'm being away just so that my boss can have a bigger yacht? That's not a reason, is it? What is the purpose, the reason behind why I'm doing things? And the green energy connects very much with that. The sunshine yellow, that extroverted people orientation, is that reaching out to people? Is that talking to people? Is that presentation to people? Is that connecting and communicating with people to make things interesting, to make them fun, to make people engaged? So what I'm really saying to you, Richard, is if you want to be a successful leader, then you need to engage in all of those four energies.
Right.
Now, you'll have a particular mix, which is your mix, and that's the strengths will flow from that. But you need to learn it. And leaders who say, "Oh, I don't appear to be rude, but I'm just got high red energy."
Yeah.
No, you're rude, so don't do it. Don't hide behind it, as some people try to do.
Yeah.
Or worse still, say, "Oh, I don't do detail." No, your responsible position as a leader, get your head into the detail. Get your account manager to brief you.
Yeah.
Make sure you've got good technical advisors behind you to give you that detail. That's also part of your job, even though it's not your preference.
Yeah.
So that's what people read about in their profile, Richard, these four colours working together. But the third element that Carl Jung introduced was this difference between sensing and intuition. And I think this is a real opportunity for teams and for leaders to really understand it, because intuition is your preference to look at the future, to look at ideas, to look at tangential thinking, to really create where we're going. So often intuition helps in that strategic thinking and getting that strategic vision across. Whereas the sensing, which is that step by step, what do my senses tell me the way the world is? That sensing, perceiving preference really enables you to fill in the steps of how you can achieve that vision. And the two work in leadership very, very closely together. You've got to have a vision of where you're going, but you've also got to have a route plan of how to get there.
Right.
And the two work very closely together. And again, if your preference is one way, don't forget the other.
And is this what, you hear in other models as sort of the description of left brain thinking and right brain thinking? If you've got the intuition of trying to sort of reframe or frame what the art of the possible might be in an indirect way, and on the other hand you've got the more clear binary view of these are the things that I would need to do, the more logical side of it. Is that another way of talking about the same sort of topic? That's another way of talking
about the same sort of thing. Yeah, sort of the left brain, right brain paradox. Yes.
Excellent. Those are fascinating and really good to get some more depth around what the elements of the insight model is. And as I was reading more about your experience, I sort of got a sense that this was an opportunity in this role with Insights to go out and start to have fun with teams. And I read somewhere, I think, that you were bringing more fun into the work with the teams that you were traveling around Europe to spend time with. Is that right?
Yes. This is something I've had in my heart for very many years, actually, Richard. The idea of using fun experiences as a learning. I think somebody says nobody learns more than a child at play.
Right.
So play with things, open up possibilities. In to use the expression, enjoy the journey, and then think, well, what have I learned from that particular process? If we take something like the Kolb model of learning, we have we go out and we have an experience, but if we don't reflect upon what we've experienced and what have we learned from the experience, then it gets lost. And so much of so-called away days and corporate experiences just focus very much upon either just having fun with no purpose, or it's like some of the team building things, it's focused on the task.
Right.
So if you've built your raft and you've paddled across the river, then fantastic, end of story. The question is, what happened in the building How did people interact in the building? What have you learned about yourself and your colleagues in that? What went right and what went not so right? And okay, task achievement is great, but what have you learned from that?
Right.
And it's that learning, and that's where tools like the Insights Discovery Model give you a language and a vehicle to say, okay, why did she do what she did the way she did it? You know, and what was that effect upon me? Was I a barrier to it, or was I did I embrace it and use it?
There's what comes to mind is something which I try to bring to my work, which I describe as, I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase serious play, which is
exactly, yes,
all about taking the ongoing experience of work and trying to bring serious play into it. So if we're trying to win more customers, then, you know, it should be much less about, well, what are we going to do in this particular, I don't know, sales campaign to win a customer, and more about how can we progressively learn by trying things in a way that's enjoyable, let's say playful, serious play, so that we can get better and learn from it. And that's what you're talking about, right?
Very much so, because if we go right back again to our individual, okay, we all take ourselves far too seriously.
Right.
And by taking ourselves too seriously, we put ourselves in a box. And therefore we don't grow.
Right.
And if you think about, where children grow and on a daily basis, they're learning new languages, they're learning new skills, and they're evolving. So my question is, what point in life do we stop growing? Do we stop learning new things? Do we stop expanding?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a really important lesson there, that if we take things too seriously, then it will suck the joy out of life, but it'll also stop us probably reaching our potential as well.
Absolutely. And it stops us thinking differently, because we immediately put up barriers. I can't do that. That doesn't work. We tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work. Well, it's a different world today than it was 10 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe 10 years ago, great idea, wrong time.
Yeah.
So it helps break down those barriers that we have internally, but also breaks down the barriers that we have with our colleagues at work. Do we enjoy it? Do we like our colleagues? Do we appreciate them? Do we know anything about them?
And I suppose by finding out those things, particularly as leaders, that's how you can start to develop culture as well, I would guess.
Yes, and we're back to that culture of trust, back to benevolence, right? If you know nothing about me, why should I trust you? Why do you trust me? If you don't know how many children I've got, whether I've got an aged mother in a home that needs high fees that I have to work for to keep her there. The more we know about our people as people, rather than just operatives, then the greater the connection is in those organizations. And that's one of the things I learned very much in from the Japanese management at Canon. They were very, very close to people, and they gave people time to think. I don't think we give people time to think. I remember saying to a Japanese senior manager that he was moving to another job, and I said, well, what's your job? And he said, to sit by the window.
Wow, what an answer is that? Sit by the window.
And he said, yeah, I have a year to sit by the window and come up with an idea. Yeah,
and that's a foreign approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
To the way of thinking that we're that we're directed towards.
Yeah. So give people time to think and to reflect, and if you walk around the office and you see people sitting at the desk looking out the window, most managers will probably say, "Come on, get on with your work." I am working. I'm thinking, what is the best way to approach this company? I'm thinking things through. I'm using my creative skills.
I mean, what you're talking about sounds a lot like the shift that's been happening from that industrialized way of working, where people clock on and clock off, and they turn up as a tool for a company, to being a creative force who is contributing, at a much more fundamental level. And you were probably ahead of your time making the sorts of points you were making and doing the work you were doing, what was there, sometime in the 90s with insights, because these are topics which are probably current now, but wouldn't have been then. And I know because I was working then at that time.
Yeah, and they are really pertinent and relevant just right now as we go through the working from home debate.
Yes.
The two schools of thought that, people are lazy working from home, and if people are in the office, then they're going to be working. And I think it throws up a number of really important issues for senior leaders today. Because if your leadership style is the command and control,
right?
Unless I can see you with your nose in the computer, then you're not working. To the point where I have to trust you to work, and that throws up a real issue again, the fundamental planks of leadership, which is: have you trained the people? Do they know what they have to achieve? Do you know of any barriers which will stop them achieving that? If so, let them get on with do it, and then report back to you on their progress. And being able to manage people remotely is a challenge for some leaders today, because they have to think, oh, what shall I do today? I don't know, I'll think about it when I get to the office. No, you've got to plan it. You've got to tell people. You've got to communicate. You've got to trust. And if somebody is, goes for a run after lunch, for example, or goes for a walk in the park after lunch, the chances are in the afternoon they'll come up with better solutions, better customer interactions than if they had stayed there like nose to the chalk face. They still have the targets. They've got to achieve it. It's got to be monitored.
Yeah.
We can't accept poor performance, but we need to manage it in a much more different, creative way, because today's younger employees demand that. And if you don't deliver it, they'll go somewhere else.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about makes a lot of sense, and you can see all of the signs have always been there. We want people to be creative in their jobs. We don't want them just to turn up as a number and clock on and clock off, and that means bringing creativity. Creativity's traditionally been outside of the industrialized world. You have enclaves of artisans and creativity, and it's not bound by the same rules and the same laws. I was reading an interesting book recently on the subject of productivity, and there was an example in there of a Wall Street journalist who had been researching a story about some corruption in a local community for over a year, and they wanted to write their article, but there was just so much information and content that there was no common thread. So this guy sat in a hammock all summer under an apple tree and just contemplated it. And by the end of it, he worked out that the common thread was one particular old chap who had been involved in lots of aspects of it, but no real central theme. And he realized that by structuring his story that way, he was able to write a remarkable piece that ended up winning awards, in the press. Now, it's a little bit of a tangent from the topic we're talking about here, but what I'm trying to illustrate is that creative paths aren't linear. Creative paths are lateral, and they meander, and in the working world today, that's crucial to give people the space to meander, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's fair. Going back to Carl Gustav Jung again, of course, he was the great believer in dreams. And I was working in Germany, and this guy said on this particular away couple of days that the senior leadership team had done to deal with a particularly difficult problem, after a morning of analysing the problem, the trainer said, right, well, we're going to go home early today, and you have my permission to dream. I want you to go home tonight and dream, and just take a piece of paper by your bedside, and whatever you've dreamt, write it down on that bit of paper. And they all came the next day with their bits of paper, and they revisited their flip charts of the analysis of the problem, and the solutions came out. Bit wonky, different bits here, different bits there, but gradually for people dreaming and processing internally, they're allowing, as Jung would say, their subconscious to process the information, and they came out with imaginative and creative ideas for the problem. So dreaming is can be a bit scary and wonky, but there are some messages there to be recognised.
It's a great story, and one that illustrates the point really well. So thank you. What I was going to ask you about next is what you've been doing for quite a number of years now through MR Dynamics. You work with your son, you work with Marcus, and you continue to teach teams and help them develop. Between you must have seen thousands and thousands of leaders, and I'm interested in some of the insights, the thematics, the archetypal ways of leading that you see, both good and bad, things that have come out from meeting lots and lots of people, both good and bad, in that work.
Again, very privileged to work with some fantastic teams and some wonderful people that I greatly admire. I think one of the things that's come through in terms of what makes a really good leader is this question of purpose. Everybody knows what they have to do, but do they know why they're doing it? What is it they're ultimately trying to achieve? And I was working in Switzerland with a pharmaceutical company, and they were the team were sort of trying to get to grips of some of their goal setting. And I said to them, if your child said to you, what are you going to do today at work, Daddy or Mummy? Because they were 50-50. And one lady said, oh, well, I tell my daughter that I'm going to be working in a laboratory, analysing slides and things. And the other one sort of said, yeah, I analyse the data which comes from the work that people do in the laboratory. And after about an hour, the reason they went to work and the reason they should tell their children is they were finding a cure for cancer.
Wow.
And if you go to work thinking, whatever it is you're doing, I'm going to find a cure for cancer, then everyone knows why you're doing it. Yeah? The what is the bit you play in the kaleidoscope or the jigsaw, which will bring that cure for cancer. But it's that, why are you doing it? Now, not everybody can go to work thinking, I've got a cure for cancer. But I think it was just a wonderful example of it in the COVID inquiry just the other week, where the general who's in charge of the logistics for when the army were brought in to distribute all the PPE equipment, and he said, for myself and my guys, it wasn't about delivering gowns and masks. It was ensuring that NHS professionals felt safe at work. And to me, that is the difference between leadership and management. Leadership is about setting that vision and that purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? And even if you're a stacker in a supermarket shelf, why are you doing what you're doing? Or are you there to stack shelves, or are you there to ensure a good customer experience for the people who go to that shop?
Absolutely.
And if you think I'm putting these things here, so little old lady, wrong expression perhaps, but people could easily access the things on the shelves, that they're there for them. That's what I'm trying to do, isn't it? The task is stacking the shelves. The purpose is make it easy shopping, to interact with customers, which is very important.
And another example, actually, going back to COVID, people working in supermarkets stacking shelves became known as the frontline workers, because everyone realised if people weren't doing that, there's nothing to eat.
Yeah.
And all of the time you're saying those things, what's in my head is we're back to intuition again. So what is that higher purpose? And we're back to having the time to make the realisation that the scientist is looking for a cure for cancer rather than in a laboratory analysing data. Those things require the time for the intuition to arise and to create the insight that's going to motivate people, that gives them that existential reason that gets them the motivation to do their best work.
Yeah, and those interpersonal reactions which go along the way. Back to my army days, coffee time was really important because it was the one time in the day when all the officers got together and had a chat about what was going on and what they were doing and what the trends and things. Yeah. Whereas quite often in a lot of workplaces, don't loiter at the coffee machine. Go get back to your desk. Well, it's at the coffee machine where the breakthroughs come, the ideas come from, the interpersonal. Even if they're just talking about football, the fact that you're a West Ham supporter and I'm a West Ham supporter means we'll probably get on a little bit better than we did when I thought you were an Arsenal supporter. And sorry,
well, as you said, we're all human. And we should all try and have more fun in the things that we're doing, and that's what brings it out. And the coffee time in the army, no doubt, was that. It was about connecting with the humans, not the tasks.
Yes. And the task is absolutely clear what you have to do. And if it's not clear, it should be made clear. But the interpersonal part of it, the human part about it, is the most important thing in the workplace.
My next question, just briefly, you work with your son. You've been developing a business together. What's it like working in a family business?
When Marcus and I came to work together, I said to him, Marcus, when we're working together, I'm not your dad. I need you to be critical. I need you to come up with different ideas because he's a very different personality to me. I need you. Now, I reflect upon it, I think, was that such a good thing to say? However, that has been brilliant. Yeah. Yes. And that's why I'm not retired. I'm still working because I'm working for my grandchildren and working for, and also because I believe that we can make a difference to people. We can make people's working environments a little bit happier and make people a little feel more rounded and feel more part of that interdependence that we have with our work colleagues.
Well, I think it's great. And so many businesses used to be family businesses, and there's a more familial culture to the way they operated, and that's sort of less so now. So it's great to hear that happening. Richard, can we talk a little bit now about stress management? Okay. Because you're part of ISMA, which I'm imagining stands for International Stress Management Association. Am I right?
Institute of Stress.
Okay, Institute, not international, but we'll take Institute of Stress Management. And it's a topic that's really relevant, isn't it? Because there's so much discussion about stress now. We talk about people being in digital isolation with their work. We talk about the mental health crisis. We talk about stress levels being higher for people in their busier lives than ever before. Perhaps you can share your experience of working specifically in this area and helping people with stress management.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because it is a very important issue, and the way it's talked about changes through time, through stress, through to resilience, to mental health. They're all very much interrelated, and they come very often from the position where people don't feel they have any sense of control over their lives. If you, I think Viktor Frankl talked very much about the logo sense part of control, and if you don't feel you have that, then again, life will become quite stressful. When I first became interested in it, there was basically two types of people, and A types and B types. And of course, the insights discovery model says very, very clearly there are loads of types of people, and stress occurs when you feel out of control and you start winding up your mechanisms in your fight and flight response. And so people feel stressed when they become perpetually in that fight or flight response, and they're not in their normal, static, tick-along, happy-go-lucky sort of state. And so individual people have a complete, unique, and individual view of the world. The way we perceive the world is totally unique for us, and therefore our experience is totally unique for us, and therefore understanding yourself, understanding what your stress indicators are, is really important. What causes you to flip into this fight or flight response, and insights discovery is very useful like that. So for people who have sort of high extroverted thinking, high fiery red energy, they need that sense of control. They need task accomplishment. If they don't feel that they're doing things and achieving things, then they will feel out of control and feel stressful. Similarly, those who have sunshine yellow need that personal interaction. They need to be able to express themselves, to get things off their chest, because their solutions to their issues are out there with people in this extroverted world. For those people who are more introverted, if I think I'm working against my values and doing things which don't align with those values, for the people of high earth green energy, that again is stressful. If I haven't got time to do things in a logical sequence, if I'm making wild leaps of in my work, then for those who are particularly on the sensing side, that becomes stressful. I haven't got time to line my ducks up.
Yes.
Then I find it difficult. And similarly, those who
becomes overwhelming.
Yeah. And for those of high cool blue energy, again, their world is one of detail, and is it logical? Does it fit? Is it based upon on facts and evidence? And if I think it's not like that, then I'm uncomfortable and I feel stressful. So stress is very, very personal.
Yes,
it's as personal as every single individual, and so trying to come up with simple solutions that affect everybody, it just isn't going to work. But there are some very clear principles, and that's why good leadership matters. If stress manifests itself very often in physical illnesses.
Yes.
And quite often, if you've got a sick office, you've got a poor leader. They tend to go to go. Whereas good leaders give very clear direction, are good listeners, get people involved, know what they're doing, and treat different people differently.
Yes. Treat them as individuals.
And give them what they know within the context, of course, of delivering the job,
yes,
which is a given.
And what comes to mind as you talk about, people have a different frame of reference onto what stresses them. And we talked about how you can identify some of those frames through insights. What comes to mind is what I'd read is, you describe yourself as a Buddhist, and within Buddhism, to the limited extent that I understand it, non-attachment and recognizing the dukkha and the fact that there is challenging chaos and stress in the world, acknowledging it and trying to, if you like, remain unattached to it. Is that part of the answer as well?
Very much so. We take everything too seriously, and we take ourselves too seriously. And from a Buddhist perspective, a lot of our problems become from our focus upon ourselves, of how we feel about things. And the more we think about, from a Buddhist perspective, other people, the more we move, Shantideva said, the route to happiness is quite simple. You just move your focus away from yourself and onto other people. And away you go. And that, again, really applies to leadership. Effective leaders think about other people. They think about their teams. They think about their organizations. They don't think about, is this decision going to affect my shareholding bonus? And that, in a way, builds trust and builds good leadership. So I'm very, very fortunate, actually, Richard, because I'm able to take my Buddhist faith and the opportunity to teach meditation and Buddhism as I do weekly, and working with the insights discovery model, and Jungian psychology draws very, very heavily from Buddhism, a lot more heavier than Carl Gustav Jung, being an Edwardian white man, would prepare to admit.
Yes.
But strong correlation between the two fit very, very neatly to what I'm doing, and it's probably, Richard, one of the reasons why I'm still doing it. But if I wasn't doing something I actually believed in would help people, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think I get what you mean when you create the parallel with Jung and Buddhism, but they both got the dimension of transcendence within them, and I suppose if I'm thinking about the Eightfold Path in Buddhism as well, it has some very clear things to say about work as well, doesn't it? In terms of choosing sort of the right work to do. And you talk about having a kind of humanistic approach to working with colleagues, thinking about them first ahead of sort of shareholder value. Do you think some of those things, it's easy for them to get lost in sort of big corporate world that we're living in now?
Yes. It's a quick answer to that question. I remember Sir John Harvey Jones talking to, I was lucky enough to go to his lecture when he was talking to managers in the water business at the time of water privatization. Mm-hmm. And he said very clearly, you have to remember now, whatever you've done in the past, your main aim now is shareholder value. Mm. And I felt greatly saddened by that, because I believe if you do the right things right, then shareholder value will come out at the other end. And that's been proven over and over again that places which are happiest to work, best places to work in, companies,
yes,
do best. Their shareholder value goes up. Yeah,
I can believe it.
Yeah, you clearly have to do all the other right things in the marketplace, not just the market, and make sometimes very tough decisions. But at the end of the day, if your heart is connecting with making work a good place to be, to doing a good thing, then people stay. Recruitment costs drop down, people grow, people learn, people contribute, and the company does better.
You put it perfectly there, I think. So thank you. Last question about stress. You mentioned that you teach meditation as well, which my own experience as somebody who meditates is that I find it an amazing stress relief. Do you think that companies and leaders do enough with sort of participatory practices, things that they can introduce their colleagues and staff to help them deal with the stress and burden that gets built up at work? Of
course, it would be helpful, but it's two caveats I would say, actually, Richard. First, it's not for everybody, and people got to do it in a way which it works well for them, and it shouldn't be mandatory.
Sure.
It should be opportunity for people to pursue it, and a lot of Buddhist thought is now, if you like, very much secular, sort of cognitive behavioral therapy, that type of thing. It's pure Buddhism, but it's in the secular world and really useful. And I think it's if you're going to do meditation, then I come at it from a Buddhist perspective, but certainly I wouldn't present it in a Buddhist perspective if I was teaching it in a workplace, because it needs to be done in a very totally secular way.
And as you say, it's a personal thing, and a personal choice, and people will should be able to, I suppose, maybe to reframe it, maybe companies could help them find other participative ways of addressing their stress.
Yes,
if that's not for them.
Yeah. And also on the object of stress, I think what companies can help people do things a little bit differently, even though it might just come out of their comfort zones a little bit. For someone who's very task orientated, giving them tasks to do as a way of relaxation doesn't work.
Right.
You need to have a complementary things that just stretch people, increase people's resilience is is the buzzword at the moment, I think, so that they can feel more competent and more capable, and work a little bit outside their comfort zone. I mean, I had a slight digression here, but I had a wonderful, interesting conversation with a very senior manager in a pharmaceutical company, director, and he said, I've got a problem. He said, I've got this manager who is really, really clever. She's very, very smart. She's got PhDs and all the rest of it. She's a highly competent woman. The problem I have is that whenever I give her a job, she immediately understands the job, immediately understands the role, understands exactly what everybody is doing, micromanages them, and ends up taking over the job herself. And so I can't really promote her. And my advice to him was, give her a job completely and totally outside, put her in charge of, I don't know, vehicles or something.
Out of her comfort zone entirely.
So she has to rely upon other people.
Yeah.
And then she'll start leading them rather than micromanaging them.
Very sensible advice. Very good advice. Very good advice. Well, you've told me about some fascinating things today, Richard. Starting with your years in the British Army, we've got to the point of discussing the Buddhist faith at the end of our conversation. That sounds like a long journey to have gone on. Do you have any sort of final things that you'd like to share as part of this conversation?
No, I've really enjoyed it, Richard. Thank you very, very much indeed. It's I've really been very lucky to have had that journey, and lucky enough to still be enjoying doing that journey. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share it with you.
Thank you very much for coming here today, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.